Potter. Here. Bauer.
Here.
Hooper. Absent. Ryder. Here. Wistman.
Here.
McDonald.
Here.
And we have one vacant seat as well.
Thank you, Ms. Ellison. We have a quorum for tonight's meeting. I'm going to move on to item 3, which is the general public comment, where the public is invited to make comments on items that are interest to the public and within the commission's jurisdiction that are not listed on today's agenda. And there'll be 3 minutes allowed per person. I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Chair Potter. And I'm seeing 4 attendees joining us this evening. Make that 5. And I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time. Still no hands. I'll pass it back to Chair Potter.
Okay, thank you for that. With that, I will close the general public comment period. And we can move on to item 4, which are the committee reports. And first off, we have Council Liaison Kevin McDowell.
Thank you very much. Council met on April 18th, and we started our hybrid council meetings. This one was just council in chambers, but I understand the next one will be public. Welcome to chambers as well as still having the Zoom opportunities. And I suppose this means commission can't be far behind. And then the council also approved the IZO changes planning had seen previously. There were public comments and concerns, but the mayor and the council expressed strong support for the changes, specifically the work of the planning staff and M Group. These changes will give the city so much more strength in cases like similar to the Safeway gas application we had. And this effort was council priority this year. Council voted 7-0. Also, council heard the appeal by the Tom Roses, read the Planning Commission Dougherty Spar decision and voted 7-0 to reject the appeal. I also, as a side note, I noticed that the parking workshop that the commission participated in now has a website with a summary of what went down in that first workshop discussion. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It all sounds like pretty good news. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Okay, well, the next report would be the Pedestrian and Bike Committee, and Commissioner Hooper is not able to make this meeting. I'm wondering if Director Hines has a report on that committee or if they met since we last met.
Let's see. I was not in attendance at the meeting. I guess we would have had a meeting, so I don't think they've met again. They met on April 11th. I'm guessing my dates because I don't have a calendar in front of me, but they did talk about the Home Depot application that is in for the old Kmart site at Plaza North, and provided some feedback on that project and bike and ped facilities with that project. And then they also received a presentation and discussion on the upcoming goals and priorities discussion at council, similar to what is scheduled for this commission this evening.
Great, thank you for that report. Then we have the Tree Advisory Committee. Commissioner Wistman.
Thank you, Chair. Let's see. Yeah, we were busy last week. Had a number of items, and I'll just tick off a few. First of all, there's an effort underway that Tree Advisory Committee would like to support, which is to map all of the purple pipe extensions throughout the city, such that new growth and new plantings can be coordinated with locations of those purple pipes. So I understand that there is an initiative underway, and so we wanted to extend our support for that initiative. Second item was there was discussion also about including an FAQ, frequently asked questions section on the city's website, specifically focused on tree care, tree maintenance, new trees, recommended trees, things like that. So that is under development by the team and the subcommittee at the Tree Advisory Committee, and hopefully that'll be forthcoming with a little bit more fine tuning. I think probably the point of biggest discussion and what the rest of the advisory committee had me bring to the commission here was full support for a tree ordinance as one of the priorities that I know we'll be discussing tonight and in the future. So just wanted to, reflect both members of the advisory committee as well as members of the public who attended that were in strong support of asking the council to make that tree ordinance one of our priorities across both this commission as well as the city council itself. Last is there's an update about sidewalk trees. There's been a sidewalk tree list that's been on the books for a while, and that's being updated with best practices and other recommendations. So that is also being worked on by a subcommittee, tree advisory, and that'll be forthcoming to either weave in as part of the tree ordinance or the FAQ section on the website. So those are the biggest takeaways from the last meeting.
Thank you so much for that report and for your continued efforts there. It's a good timely that you're bringing forward this idea of the tree ordinance as a priority, since later in tonight's meeting, we'll be talking about goals and priorities. So thank you for that. Do any other commissioners have anything to report on? Okay, seeing no hands, I would like to turn it over to the director, Heather Hines, for the director's report.
Thank you, Chair Potter. A short list of things to update you on. The first, which we are extremely excited about, on Monday, so just yesterday, the new community development director started for the city. Alex Greenwood has joined the team, and he most recently was with the city of South San Francisco. Brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, and is kind of getting up to speed and meeting the team and, hitting the ground running. So look forward to having him in person at a subsequent meeting so I can introduce you to him. But just want to kind of put that on your radar, and we're really pleased to have him join the city team. Let's see, council member McDonald did touch on chapter 24 changes. I just did want to note there was one requested change made by the council, and that was to require that the meeting details, such as the date, time, on the signs, the on-site postings, be a larger font, a font of 3 times the size of font on the rest of the sign, to just make it extremely clear and kind of stand out for people as they pass by when the hearing is scheduled. So that was the one change that does go before the council for second reading at the May 2nd hearing. Let's see. Wanted to a couple things from other committees that aren't represented with clear liaison, committee liaisons on this commission. May is Historic Preservation Month. So there is a wealth of activities happening in the community. You can find that on our website. There is on Sunday at the library, there is at the museum, I'm sorry, there is some activity around that, kind of kicking off the month. There will be a proclamation at the city council, and there's a range of other activities, talks, tours, that kind of stuff to help celebrate preservation in Petaluma. From the Public Art Committee, Fine Balance was approved or recommended for approval to the City Council by the Public Art Committee in a reduced scope of 2 sculptures and in a new location at the H Street Pocket Park. So that then went to the Recreation Music Park Commission for their consideration, and they voiced support, and it will be going to the city council at the second meeting in May. Let's see, also wanted to update you, many of you maybe have heard about the Homekey Project, which is 60 permanent supportive housing units. The city did get a grant through the Homekey funds from the state, and we are working diligently with Burbank Housing to convert the America's Best Value Motel on Montero to 60 permanent supportive housing units. So that is moving forward, and we are extremely excited for that development, and really, seeing that along with the recent People's Village at the Mary Isaac Center, really helping to start addressing our unsheltered population's housing needs. Also exciting, there's a lot going on. The Healthy Democracy lottery selection for the panel that will be discussing the fairgrounds occurred. So that panel has been selected. The advisory panel that will be presenting information has also been selected. So those meetings are forthcoming, and we're looking forward to that discussion and consideration and ultimate recommendation to the city council late summer, early fall, I believe, is when that will culminate. Amy's Kitchen headquarters was recently approved for office use at the old Carithers building at the corner of Western and Kentucky. So Amy's Kitchen made the decision to, instead of locating kind of further out in a more office park setting, to locate in the center of town, really thinking about their employees' desires for a hybrid work environment, and utilizing some of the resources downtown, and working with other businesses to do things like offer gym and food and some of that kind of stuff that they originally had thought that they would provide in a headquarters of their own, and instead locating in that building. So that's the old Couches Etc. building. So that is moving forward. And I don't have any update on planning commission meetings transitioning to in-person meetings yet. Getting the council meeting up and running, first meeting at the last meeting to kind of try to work out some of the bugs. For instance, most of the microphones lost their battery strength halfway through. So we're working through some of the new technology, some of the new infrastructure. I'm looking forward to inviting the public at the next hearing to participate, and then I'm sure things will grow from there. So I will keep you updated as soon as I have information to share on target dates for the other boards and commissions coming back to in-person meetings. And then the last thing, just kind of as a heads up, we are anticipating the release of the final EIR for the Davidon project, Scott Ranch Davidon project, in the next couple of weeks. So as soon as that is made available, posted on the website, we will let you know, so that you're not getting that large document the week before we're going to be coming to you for a public hearing. So we will alert you to the availability of that document as soon as we can, to give you a heads up. And I think that's all I have.
Okay, well, thank you so much for the report, and very exciting news for our new community development director. We're looking forward to meeting him at a subsequent meeting. Also, nice to hear that Amy's Kitchen will be coming to downtown Petaluma. Are there any questions from the commissioners about the director's report, or any other items we want to discuss before moving into the agenda? I see Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to add to the director's report, I guess, what a big deal it is for us to get this Homekey homelessness hotel for so many reasons. But people ask, well, what is being done to help the homeless? and the homeless situation. The important part of this Homekey is that it comes with operating and support service funds. It's not just a building. I mean, and the homeless need housing, but they also need so many more support services. And this comes with funding to do that. So this is a really brilliant add to the city's efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other hands up, we're going to move on to item 6, approval of the minutes. And you should have received the draft minutes from the April 12th, 2022 meeting. I had a chance to review it. Are there any changes or concerns about the minutes? With the show of thumbs up, can we approve the minutes tonight? Okay, looks like those minutes from the April 12th, 2022 are approved. And so now we have our new business for tonight. Item 7A is the Nelson Dougherty Easement Vacation. And I wanted to let folks know that I live fairly close to 21 Branching and 111 Olive Street. So I enlisted the assistance of staff and the GIS team to make a determination about whether I had a conflict of interest. And I do live within 1,000 feet, but outside of the 500 feet radius from that property. And I spoke with the city attorney's office, and they do not believe that I have a conflict of interest on the issue tonight, which is the easement vacation. So I won't be recusing myself. But with that introduction, I did want to ask if there are any planning commissioners who would like to disclose any ex parte communications. Okay, I personally don't have any ex parte communications. I don't see any other commissioners. So I would like to ask for the staff to provide their presentation on this item.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Stutzman, City of Petaluma. I'm the city engineer. Tonight I have the owner, Scott Nelson, and his design team with us from Adobe Associates. So this agenda item tonight is an easement vacation for the development at 804 6th Street. So an easement vacation, which is also known as an abandonment, is a process of abandoning or removing an easement that are on properties that are no longer necessary. So as a first step of the vacation process, the planning commission must find that the proposed vacation conforms to the city's general plan. And once that finding is made, it goes to city council for approval. So for just a little background, because this project has a long history, in 2007, City Council approved the final map for the Woodridge subdivision, which was a 5-lot subdivision with a parcel A, also known as was a roadway, which served 4 of the 5 lots. Today, the property has been approved for only a 2-lot subdivision, so with access to those parcels from Branching Way and from Olive Street. The easement that we are looking to abandon tonight was an emergency vehicle access easement, a public utility easement, and a public water line easement. These easements were required as part of the 5-lot subdivision, as it was a shared road that these utilities served. So they served 4 of the 5 lots that were up there. But now that it's a 2-lot subdivision with separate accesses for each parcel, these easements are not required anymore. So the vacation is the last step to get this project to approve the parcel map. So we'll take it here for approval to make sure it's in conformity with the general plan, and then we'll take it to council for final approval. And once that happens, the owner, Scott, and their engineers can record this map and they can start pulling their building permits. So I don't necessarily have any more of a presentation than that. Kind of open it up, see if there's any comments. I could share the parcel map that we have to give you a little more drawing or description of what's happening.
I think it would be helpful maybe to look at that parcel map, and then we can bring it back to the commissioners for any questions for you or comments.
So this is, I think this was in the staff report, kind of a general overview of what where the easements are. So it's showing here is that private parcel A, the private roadway coming up and serving these 5 lots. The final layout of the parcel. Like this is the draft parcel map that would be eventually recorded, but it's now showing you how the lots are separated. So with this shared access easement that was originally on this one is no longer needed to serve these lots because this is now just one larger lot. So kind of this process of abandoning the easements is just removing these utility easements that are just not required or necessary anymore with it, that come along with the 2-lot subdivision.
And Jeff, can I ask a clarifying question? It's the utility easement that is being vacated. Is that correct?
It's the vehicle, it's all the easements that are on it. So the vehicle access easement going to these lots, the public utility easement, and the public water line easement. So when you look at it, it was these easements following along this route right here, coming up Olive Street, serving the original 3-4 lots that were here, which are not needed anymore because this all gets merged together when you look at it from here. So you can kind of see this parcel, the original parcel A, in the final parcel map condition of why it's not needed anymore, because it's not serving anything because it's one lot. And I also have, like I mentioned, Adobe and Associates and their surveying team. So if there's any kind of more technical survey questions, they would be able to help answer this as well.
Okay, are there any questions from the commissioners? Jeff, I'm not able to see the,
Oh, sorry. Let me
that's
stop
okay.
sharing.
Oh, thank you. Commissioner Ryder.
And unfortunately, my question was going to be specifically on the map. I was wondering if you could show us where the emergency access and the public utilities are coming into the primary site now on that map, because I don't recall.
So you can see here's Olive Street down here, 6th Street up here. So you can see this hatch right here. You kind of see on public water line easement is this guy that runs right up along here, up around lot 1 and diving into these, as well as the public utility easement is a dash. So it's running along the face of these as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Perhaps I was unclear. Where is the actual water and the utility and the emergency egress that's serving the final map that you're proposing coming into the site?
So they'll be coming off of Olive Street and Branching Way is the water line connection that they're working on with the public improvement plans that go with the parcel map. And then emergency access, it's not needed because they have access to it, to each parcel, separate accesses.
Okay, so perhaps I can ask the question a slightly different way. Is there any legal risk to the city by removing an emergency access point, because you're saying that there is one already on the design and we just don't need 5 of them anymore? Is that correct?
And Jeff, maybe I can jump in. You discussed with our fire marshal as well as the utility easements before this and the summary abatement that goes to council, right? So they confirm that they're no longer necessary?
Correct. And I mean, if you think of it, if the condition that we have right here, and you have 3 owners, lot 1 owner, lot 2, and lot 3, if there is an incident at lot 3, an emergency vehicle had to come out there, say, to fight a fire, it's a private road, so they have to have an access easement to get to parcel 3, because they don't own it, they don't have those rights. But with the final condition of the parcel map, it is now one lot that the owner now owns everything. So he doesn't need to provide a separate easement for that because they are the sole owner of it. So it's a different scenario because in the original case, you have 5 owners sharing an access point versus in this case, you have 1 owner.
Okay, thank you.
Are there, I can't see any hands raised. I don't know if there are any other questions about the map that's up. Not seeing any hands, I'd like to turn it over to our moderator to see if we could open the public comment period. See if there's anyone from the public who'd like to make a comment on this item.
Yes, thank you, Chair Potter. I don't see any hands raised in our attendees joining us tonight. I'll just provide a few moments for them to raise their hands if they wish. I do see one hand raised from Paul G. I'll share my timer. Okay, Paul G, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Okay, yes, thank you. I haven't studied this issue, and it's certainly no problem, vacationing this thing if you want to, make their lives simpler since it's a smaller development than original. I just want to make one general comment, and I'll get right off, and that is just to open up the city in all ways is appropriate. It doesn't require extra technology. It just requires the will to say welcome. That is it. And therefore, every single meeting should be open for public attendance immediately. No more excuses. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And I believe that is our only hand raised on this item. I'll stop sharing my screen and pass it back to Chair Potter.
Okay, at this time, I'd like to close the public comment period and thank those who have provided input on this item. If I see that Councilmember McDonald has his hand up to ask questions, at this time we can also express our opinions about this item or make a motion. So, Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. Can I see the final tentative map or the tentative map again up on screen? I have no objection to the vacation, but in this view, can you with your cursor kind of circle where the Dougherty property is and the Nelson property separately?
Does somebody from Adobe want to help answer that question?
And let me continue. I think what I saw at council in this item was that that center area was where the two houses are going to be. Where your cursor is, I have no questions in that area, but there's where the Nelson property splits from the Dougherty property. There's where the two house sites are. Looks
And
like
Jeff, I was going to ask if somebody from Adobe might be able to pull up the current map showing the 2-lot configuration as opposed to the 4-lot, which might clarify what we're looking at now, because this is, I believe this is the older lot configuration.
Thank you.
Chair Potter, is it okay if Dan Langley from the applicant team addresses the commission?
Yes, I welcome that input, but I also just want to remind the commissioners that the item we're considering tonight is just the easement of the vacation of the easement and not any design review or any other aspects of the proposed site plan. So let's just stay focused on that. Go ahead, Mr. Langley. You might be muted.
Oh, there we go.
Now I can see clearly how an easement's not necessary where those two parcels split now. So
Well, we saw it in a flash, but
There's, but it's back.
okay.
that's a great visual answer to my question. Thanks so much.
Excellent. If we can stop sharing the screen, then I'll check to see if any other hands are up. Are there any questions from the commissioners or any motion tonight on this item? Oh, Vice Chair Bauer.
If there's no other commission comments or questions, I'll make a motion to approve a vacation of an unused emergency vehicle access easement, a public utility easement, and a public water line easement.
Is there a second?
I'll second, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Wiseman is seconded, and we'll now have a roll call vote.
Potter,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Hooper, absent. Ryder,
Aye.
Wistman,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
and one vacant seat. That's 5 yeses.
So that item was approved. And we'll now close item 7A. And I'll move on to 7B, which was on the agenda, the zoning text amendment to modify the implementing zoning ordinance table 4.3. And that item is proposed to be continued to the May 10th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. So I would like to ask if there's any additional comments from staff, and then if I could get a motion to continue the item.
Sure. Thank you, Chair Potter. Just for context, this is a proposed text amendment to a footnote in response to the visitability ordinance and to look at residential in the MU1A, which was a direction from council when they approved that ordinance. So we didn't quite have the staff time to get it across the finish line with some of the other things. So we are requesting that it be continued to a date certain of the next meeting.
So is there a motion to continue?
A motion to continue 7B.
I'll second it.
Okay, it was moved by Commissioner Wiseman, second by Vice Chair Bauer to continue this item to May 10th, 2022. Can we have a roll call vote?
Yes. Potter,
Aye.
Bauer,
Aye.
Hooper, absent. Ryder,
Aye.
Wistman,
Aye.
McDonald,
Aye.
and one vacant seat.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. And we're doing very well tonight on time. We're on item 8, which is our discussion item. This is an information item regarding the goals and priorities for the Planning Commission vis-a-vis the City Council, and there will be no vote taken on this item. We're just going to provide input to staff. So with that, I would ask the Interim Community Development Director, Heather Hines, if she could provide the staff report, and then I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Chair Potter. So just briefly, in following the staff report, so in the recent years, we've had a number of, workshops to bring the community together, the council together, to set goals and priorities for the coming year or the coming 2 years. This really started back in 2019. We ended up with 157 goals and priorities that we were tasked with. So we were off and running and doing our best, but it was a mighty task. We got a lot done, but we did not get all 157 done. Again, in 2020, we met and had an update to kind of report out on what we had started, what we had finished, what issues we'd run into that maybe were changing the direction. And then in November of 2020, we had the passage of Measure U. We had a new council seated in early 2021. So in 2021, both April and then finalizing them in August, we came up with a new list of work plan items and have been working feverishly to address those work plan items. So we came back before the City Council in March of this year to review the progress and assign new priorities, and really requesting the council to focus on a top 10 list of priorities so that staff had kind of clear focus on the top priorities to focus efforts on. So the council discussed these items, took public comment, and did a straw poll, trying to kind of come up with a draft top list. So that's what you have at attachment A, which is basically all of the items that got at least one council member vote, and clearly showing the ones that got a majority of 5 or 4 of the council in the straw poll. This is not a final list. It is subject to reprioritization when the council considers these on Monday of next week, May 2nd. So, you know, obviously these work plan items do need to be somewhat dynamic because different things come up. You know, districting was not even on the priority list and came up and really took a lot of staff time and focus. So we know that things do come up, priorities shift, there's a mandate that comes down. So we recognize that they need to be somewhat dynamic, but are looking forward to a top 10 list from the council after the meeting, and then really the opportunity to dig into those top 10 and set up some milestones as kind of guideposts to measuring progress and determining a place to start. A lot of these priorities hit across a range of departments. A number of them are very planning focused, or even if they're not specifically planning focused out of the planning department, it's things with our roadways that impact discussions we have related to housing or access to resources or decreasing VMTs. So it really, I think, emphasizes the interrelationship of all the departments and the work we do and the priorities and the need to get everyone involved to be successful. So you have attachment A, which will be somewhat the starting point for the council's discussion on Monday. And really, we're here to present this, get some input from the commission on things that perhaps you believe are utmost important in that list, or specific milestones under some of them are broader categories. And so really just wanted to open it up for discussion, answer any questions I might be able to answer about the process so far. The staff report from the city manager's office for the meeting on Monday came out this evening. So there is some more background there, and staff will communicate any input to the commission that comes out of tonight's discussion. And with that, Chair Potter, I'm here to assist. I'm here to answer any questions I might be able to, and be of assistance to get feedback or input from the commission.
Thank you, and thanks for bringing this important item to us for the discussion tonight. I'm really impressed with the list and all the effort that's gone into it. So I think we'll just kick it off by seeing if there are any hands raised, before that we also will be getting public comment on this item today.
And I should note, Chair Potter, there was one public comment that was received, posted to the website and sent to the commissioners.
Yes, the commissioners received that via email. Thank you. Commissioner Ryder.
So I guess I have a process question just about this list. I found myself wanting more detail about what the implications of the individual priority names, what it really means. For example, if we're prioritizing the trestle, what about it? Is it a planning process? Is it a construction process? What do these titles mean? And perhaps that additional detail is in that packet that Interim Director Hines just referred to, but I don't know if that I don't think we have time tonight necessarily to go through in great detail of each of these, and nor do I think that would be a good use of time that we do have. But I just wonder if there's additional color that anyone can add in the event that we want to get into steering in specific ways.
Chair Potter, if I
Yes,
can.
please go ahead.
Yes. So great question, Commissioner Ryder, and that's some of also what staff has been struggling with a little bit, because a lot of these things are huge. They're not just one little task, right? So the trestle is very multifaceted. It is a resource that we don't own. There are environmental considerations, is it, to rehab it for what purpose? Is it for pedestrians? Is it for something more? So some of that is yet to come. So gleaning some information from the city council, but then that will be the subsequent step. So if the trestle, rehabilitation of the trestle is a priority as when we come out of the second, I think that one of the first things staff will start working to do is really sitting down and to make those milestones. So what's first? What do we need to know? Similarly, like with roads, bike paths, pedestrian improvements. So that could mean a lot of things. And so sitting down and putting those milestones and the sequencing of the milestones and the how long do we anticipate each of those milestones under each of the goals to take. So unfortunately I don't have a whole lot. I mean, I might be able to answer questions on some of them if they're specific questions, but a lot of them that is an unknown at this point.
Would it be out of turn to ask that you give us like a 1-sentence description of everything on this list, given that there are acronyms that are perhaps unknown and otherwise? Let me know if that's totally out of the question, but I feel like that might be helpful for discussion purposes.
I can do my best. I may not be able to do everything, but I'm happy to give it a go. So the trestle, I think it is to preserve and rehabilitate the trestle, both for community amenity, preservation, aesthetics, engagement with the river in the center of town. Fairgrounds engagement process, that's really the healthy democracy process that we're undergoing, in addition to a range of other engagement that the city council did approve when they approved the contract with Healthy Democracy. The LSAC Just Cause is getting legislation to protect tenant rights. Road project, bike paths, pedestrian improvements. I think that is multifaceted, focused on improving our active transportation network, making those connections where we're missing connections, improving sidewalks, making our roads more complete streets, reducing vehicle hazards. Crosstown Connector workshop was really to talk about the crosstown connectors, what they are, what's the status, what is needed, and what to the extent we know what benefits from a transportation mobility for each of those. New fire station shovel ready. That's exactly that, to develop, shovel ready plans for a new fire station. Solar add battery storage. I don't know the specifics of that. I think it is to add battery storage to city solar installations to enhance them. City charter amendment. We have a charter that is quite dated, that we often find there's things that we can't do quite the way we want to do them, or the council wants us to do them because of language in our charter. So it'd be revamping, looking at and presenting amendments to our charter. Mobile home ordinance, I think that is to stabilize rent and affordability of our mobile home. Parks, consolidate the CCBs. That's really looking at are that we have a lot of boards and commissions and committees. Are there ways that some of the committees and commissions are doing similar work, and maybe there's ways to consolidate? There's a lot of kind of grouping of committees like the Transit Committee and PBAC, Pedestrian Bicycle. Are there ways to maybe consolidate them to hit on different things as a more holistic view? Tree ordinance is exactly that, to update our tree ordinance to maximize preservation of trees, to think about what are the circumstances we would allow removal of trees that differ from our current ordinance. Parks plan, Parks Master Plan, looking at what are our parks, what are our needs, what are our priorities, and how do we move through those. Moratorium on development north of Lynch Creek, floodplain, wetland, wet meadow. That's really a desire to see a stop of development in that area north of Lynch Creek, where there is undisturbed riparian corridor. There is oaks, grasslands to really reduce development pressure on those remaining areas. Crosstown connector, equal Caulfield only. There were a number of council members who wanted to talk about crosstown connectors, but really only wanted to focus on Caulfield and not other crosstown connectors such as Rainier. Community Sports Park, I think that was the completion of the community sports park on East Washington with I think that the next phase, I think, is the baseball fields. So that was to focus on that. Decarbonizing existing buildings, including burnout and or rebates. So that's really looking at to reach carbon neutrality, we need to decarbonize 85% of our existing building stock, and we need tools, regulations, incentives to do that. Assurance to fair subtenants. I think that if my recollection is that that was to, while we are doing visioning, while we are thinking about the fair, there are a lot of tenants of the fairgrounds that are in a state of uncertainty. And so whether that is an updated lease or agreements to kind of give them a little more certainty to run their businesses and continue their activities while that process is happening. Cannabis ordinance was to create a retail cannabis ordinance. We are now limited to only delivery and only 2 delivery outfits in the city. So it would be development of retail cannabis in the city. Parklets program, we have done parklets as a provision of our free range on a temporary basis. So we do not have a permanent parklet program, which is to allow restaurants, particularly restaurants. It seems like that's the majority of them, but it doesn't necessarily limit it to restaurants, but to activate the street and expand outdoor opportunities. IPMP is the Integrated Pest Management Program to prohibit Roundup and other, and I'm forgetting the term, the technical term, the chemical, I'm forgetting it off the top of my head. IACAC is the ad hoc for the DEIA, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the policing policies. And so that was to work with the recommendations that came out of that ad hoc. Complete capital budget according to finite schedule. Oh, that one's going to stump me. I don't know the specifics on that. I'm sorry, Commissioner Ryder. Similarly with capital projects, I'm guessing those kind of go together, but I'm not sure the specifics of those. Dredging funding plan, that's really, we were able to get the river dredged. Was it last year or the year before? But there is an acknowledgement that we need to have a funding plan to do more regular dredging to keep the Petaluma River so that you can boat on it and paddleboard on it and doesn't end up silted. Balshaw Bridge, I believe that was really looking at the condition of the Balshaw Bridge. I don't remember more discussion to that one than that. Recycled water availability, that was really looking at expanding Purple Pipe and how do we expand that, particularly given the ongoing drought conditions and better utilizing that resource. AHCAC, if I'm not mistaken, this is on here twice because there was one that was more focused on the diversity, equity, and inclusion, and there was one that was kind of more focused on the policing policies. I think that's where, but I'm not sure which ended up being which. Local road safety program, that was really focused on traffic calming in those areas where we see more accidents. Vision Zero, complete streets, similarly, wanting to reduce traffic collisions and focusing on improvements to our streets. VMT ordinance, this was really focused on the next step of our vehicle miles traveled. We did adopt guidelines for our environmental review, but we don't have city programs, mitigations to kind of feeding into more like citywide programs to reduce VMT. Zero waste, single use plastics, putting together an ordinance for that. And then public meeting interpretation was moving to translation of our public meetings. I hope that helped.
Thank you.
Wow,
very
that
much.
was really, that was very impressive. I appreciate the summary. I did want to note, as you previously alluded, that it's a very comprehensive list, and we've had lists before. And can you comment sort of like on the time frame for these? Because we do a goal setting every year, but projects are multi-year projects, and some of these seem to be like to initiate the study of, and others of them seem to be like, we really want an ordinance adopted this year, and others of them like maybe a construction. So I don't know if you could comment a little bit on the time frame, so as we continue the discussion, we can keep that in mind.
I think ideally we're looking at fiscal year 23 and 24, but recognizing that some of these, and the trestle is a good example. We could make a lot of progress and we could still not be, completed with rehab by the end of fiscal year 24 because there are so many steps. So in those cases, I think those milestones are going to be really important. What do we need to do? What's our first step? What's our second step? And what's realistic to think, okay, our first step we're going to do in our first two steps we're going to do in fiscal year 23, and then in fiscal year 24, we're going to do these things. And then it might be that has to continue into the next goal cycle to do those final steps. But ideally, we're looking at fiscal year 23 and 24 as kind of our bumpers.
Great. Thanks so much. Councilmember McDonald.
Thanks. I've been kind of sitting on my hands trying to not offer too many opinions, because I think mostly what I carry is opinion and preference on all this stuff. One thing I'd like to note is if you look down the columns, different council persons had different numbers of top 10. Some had 15 or 16, and some had 5 or 6. So I mean, it's a range of how staff tried to capture what each council person was really excited about making priorities. And so you see that. And then you can also notice that I think as commented, most of these show up in the planning or legal department as where the heavy lifting has to occur. For instance, like on the trestle, if you ask an engineer to do a design and give him a time, probably he or she will get that done in that amount of time. But if you ask an attorney to negotiate with an outside agency, and this is true of permitting, is true too, it's much harder to assign a deadline. So I think what council will be asking for is what's the critical path and what's the thing that has to happen this year? And in the case of the trestle, it's probably reaching agreements with the trestle owner, SMART, and some sort of liability agreement and transfer of ownership and all that. While concurrently, all the fundraising effort and engineering effort goes on, somebody has to figure out what the critical path is and make sure. So hopefully that's the goal for this first year. Similarly, the fairgrounds, there's a lease expiration, and I'm assuming on this that the council's goal would be to not have the lease expire without a solution in hand. So, I mean, perhaps that's what the definition of this year's priority means. Some, like roads and bikes, there probably has to be clarification. Probably council will weigh in with some clarification on that safety for those not in a car, so walkability and bikeability that are such goals of our climate framework, that if we want people out of cars, we need safety. So I would expect to see council push hard for safety on all that. And then on crosstown connectors, all 7 council said crosstown connector conversation is important, but how to get to what they mean, and I think what the crosstown connector, what I will advocate for on the crosstown connector, is that a solution, a single project is selected in this process, such that we know where we're headed. We're not heading in all directions at once. And so hopefully we'll pick, this year will be, this crosstown connector will help us. If we have all the good technical data, we need to make a decision to actually make a project decision. I'm hoping that's what that means. Other things like the fire station, there's, because of Measure U, there's bond money with certain timeline. And so you want to not have the bond money sitting in the bank when the time comes. You want to have had the whole entire process for what to do to keep our fire stations from falling down in the case of earthquake or being otherwise inaccessible to the public in time of need. And then there's only a couple others I wanted to note on. One, the mobile home. It's in legal, but that went to an arbitration between the new park owner and the park residents. And there's things in the city's ordinance that could prevent this from going to such a risky point to the residents in the future. And I think that's what's about, trying to be preemptive on some of that. And I did want to touch on some of those. And then also to note that in prior communications, it's noted that some 75% or better of staff time is spent doing the non-elective regular work of the city. So the goals and priorities are for sorting out the important city activities above keeping the lights on. It's, in a sense, these are discretionary and maybe competitive for staff time. And that's why we have to do it. There are 31 goals mentioned in this report, and 10 are being looked for staff, 6 of which already have a council majority, and barring change will continue. 9 more got 3 votes, which with 1 more would have a majority council. So kind of looking for what it is from planning that would be top of the list. And I kind of heard things I should be advocating for from this group. And one is the tree ordinance. And another one that hasn't gotten a whole lot of attention is the Spanish language interpretation for all meetings, which I think is where the city's heading. And it's just a question of when it happens, which is a question of what its priority is. I hope that's helpful in terms of context for what the council is looking for some feedback from this group. Certainly all the other commissions that this has been heard at. I've been at PBAC and seen that input, and Climate Commission weighed in heavily. So it would be good for this group to have its opinion. One of my favorites is not on the list there, and that would be some sort of decarbonization effort that, much like we have lawn rebate programs, we would have a change out of gas appliances, and there could be a means test for it. I think it'd be powerful in an equity sense, and I'd love to see council start figuring out how to make that a priority at some point. Thank you very much.
Chair Potter, can I add a little something to that? So decarbonizing existing buildings, burnout and or rebates. I do want to note that staff really sees anything that happens need to have an equity lens there. So that's, it is essential that we look at any ordinance regulations with an equity lens. So that is definitely a part of that one. The other thing I would say is there are several of these that maybe are kind of getting at a similar, like safety, for instance, Vision Zero Complete Streets. We have local roadway safety program. We have road projects, bike paths. So there are some that kind of maybe there's some overlap or consolidation on some of the things that were brought up as well. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, I concur. I think that's hopefully where council's heading with all those. And I know staff's working hard on getting those in that direction too.
The list is very comprehensive and it definitely includes important items for this commission. I wanted to follow on a little bit on the complete streets because I think that's one of the highest priorities. And right now we have this Petaluma Boulevard South Road Diet construction going on where we're adding a sidewalk to connect a lot of important uses and to complete an area that has been really needing a sidewalk and a safe route for pedestrians to connect from the residential neighborhoods to some critical facilities and then to the park and ride and some bus stops. And the project is really looking great in the construction and I'm so excited for it. And I would like to see more of those kind of projects for the city to be going out for grant funding for federal highway funds and for other grant programs so that we can do more complete streets in our town. The other items on the list that I think are right in the heart of the city and really relate to the work the Plan Commission does is, of course, the restoration of the trestle, an ongoing engagement on the fairgrounds, such an important site and its location and potential, and then support for the tree ordinance, as was mentioned earlier. And I also think that, we've seen a lot of changes happen in the last couple of years as we've been dealing with this pandemic. And one of the big differences has been the use of open space and parks by people who, we didn't have the opportunity for entertainment and recreation in all the traditional venues. So I really like the idea of undertaking a comprehensive parks plan to look at the parks that we already have, what some of our needs might be. It could also tie into some of our tree planting, canopy goals, as well as equity issues. So I would like to see that be a priority, the development of a parks plan. And that might also, spill over into how we evaluate new development that comes in for their contribution to support any new needed park infrastructure. So those are a couple ideas that I had from the long list. I'm sure there are many others that have merit, but I'd like to hear from Commissioner Ryder again and then Vice Chair Bauer.
So before I weigh in about my opinion, which I just want to clarify, is that this portion of the meeting, or do we need to go to public comment before we go too far down the kind of discussion opinion portion?
No, I think it's good. We can talk about our opinions and then the public will be fully informed on what this item is including.
Okay. So I would just uplift a couple of things. I tend to agree with several of the comments that have been made. And I completely agree with your last point, Chair Potter, that I think that the parks plan and the pedestrian bike improvements are and should be one and the same. And the interconnectivity of those two facilities to get people to the places they want to be, which tend to be the outdoors, seems like it would be a shame if that didn't happen concurrently. So I'll just point that out as something I would add on to this high priority list. I personally lean away from the majority of the council in that I feel like we should focus our crosstown connection energy onto the Caulfield solution. I am not a proponent of Rainier whatsoever. And we can discuss that if that's necessary to do so. But given where the traffic flows are in this town and the traffic studies that I have seen, that seems like we should focus on that area first. So that's my 2 cents. Happy to discuss further. And it seems like the council majority is generally leaning in primary alliance with my overall thinking, but I personally think that there's a few others down here that are pretty high priority for planning commission, that perhaps are not too big of a lift, but maybe not. Things along the lines of that traffic calming, road safety, and where we go with sorry, I lost my place on the list here. The tree ordinance itself. So I think that those are all things that are really, again, they all connect to each other and the future we're trying to create. So I'll pause there. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Bauer.
Thanks very much, Chair Potter. And I was looking at the top 5, and they all look like they're, I wouldn't say call them low-hanging fruit, but things that are moving in that direction, like the new fire station, having that shovel ready. And although I think those things do sound all like positive and good things to have, I think I don't see really much up there on climate change. And I really would like to see more of a priority given to things to get us to where we need to go, carbon neutral, and to really take global warming seriously. Because, well, we're really going to need the new fire station if we don't take global warming seriously. So I think I would love to see more of a priority given to environmental concerns. And while they're not maybe planning commission specific, they are city of Petaluma specific, and certainly residents of Petaluma and residents of this planet Earth. I think these things do need to be front and center. And while they might not be easy to implement or quick fixes, or we maybe can't do them in 1 year, I still think we need to be putting them as a priority if we want to take things seriously and make sure we have a place to leave our kids. And I know it's not just us. We don't live in a vacuum, and we, the city of Petaluma, can't do it all, but we certainly can be leaders, and we have been leaders in the past, and we should be leaders in the future. So I think we should, maybe put our money where our mouth is and make those things a priority. The things on the list that I think are really look promising are the decarbonization, and not of just existing buildings, but of a lot of other buildings we have in Petaluma, and a lot of other activities that we do it in town also. The moratorium of the development along Lynch Creek, recycled water availability to our residents. I think that's going to be huge. And not only that, to other businesses, and get our purple pipes laid down, zero waste, single use, reuse, and solar. I would like to see those be a priority going forward. I think it's time to, it's time to really put these things as a priority in our town. And I would like to see some more of those rise to the top. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And Commissioner Wisman.
Thanks, Chair Potter. So I'd just like to put in another plug for the tree ordinance, not just because I represent the Tree Advisory Committee on this commission, but as you look down the list here, there's a pretty broad recognition of a lot of the assets the city has, and they're typical to many cities, whether they're streets, fire stations, buildings, things like that. I think we need an explicit recognition of the value of the trees and the tree canopy in general. So I think it's really important to make that very explicit. How we take care of the existing canopy, and how we promote the growth of and planting of new trees. Two others that I want to support also. I'd just like to pile on with Commissioner Ryder's earlier comments about the Caulfield connector, for the reasons that she stated and beyond. There's been a lot of growth in that south end of Petaluma Boulevard South. Both the Quarry Heights finishing now, and as well as the riverfront properties and the potential 40 acres next to that the commission heard a couple meetings ago. So there's a lot of development there, and I think not only to serve those communities existing and coming down the pipeline, but I think the more efficient flow of traffic using that connector will achieve, I think, one of our highest priorities, which is safer streets. Less traffic, better coordinated traffic. I think definitely leads to safer streets, and I think that's a priority for pedestrian drivers themselves, but also pedestrians and bikers. Not only that, but an efficient flow of traffic throughout town is also shown to lower VMT dramatically as well. So it accomplishes a number of our other priorities, as an all-in-one project. Last one I'd like to promote is the dredging. It's down their ways, and again, similar to the tree ordinance, I'd like to see an explicit recognition of the river as being super valuable asset to the city in terms of encouraging recreation, commerce, tourism, all of those more tangible things, plus a lot of the intangibles of just having it be a central focus of the city. So I think having literally a free flowing river promotes all of those things, plus it's more kind of ecological and geological asset as being a waterway for relieving flood pressures downtown. So for all those reasons, I'd like to also see that dredging funding become a priority. Thank you, Chair Parr.
Thank you. Commissioner Ryder.
Yeah, so I guess I have a couple of follow-on questions, if I may, Chair Potter. I'm curious about the dredging, and this is just my lack of knowledge. Is primarily the siltation of the Petaluma River caused through runoff from our own city, or is it incoming from the bay itself? Does anyone know?
So I'm going to venture to guess, since I had formerly worked for the Regional Water Quality Control Board and worked for a while on the Petaluma River, that the majority of the silt really does come in daily with the tidal influx, because the Petaluma River was really a marsh and a wetland before Europeans settled and channelized it and made it into the Petaluma River. So it's a little bit controversial, because ecologically, to go and revert back to its more natural state would be to not dredge it, but to support the modern city that we have and the needs for recreation and commerce and navigability, it requires periodic dredging.
That's correct, Chair Potter. Yeah.
I have concurrence, my fellow regional board employee.
We've got experts, we might as well ask. Thank you for that. And then I guess my next question is, I would happily just discuss this, so I want to make sure procedurally that's okay, but is this intended to be a bit of a debate, or are we really just stating our opinions?
Well, I think that the ask was that we review the list of priorities in the straw poll vote from the council and to give feedback. So I suppose that there could be some limited dialogue if you felt that other commissioners had put forward priorities you disagreed with, or that you wanted to put forward something that was left off. And actually, as we were discussing it, I remembered that we had a pretty passionate discussion about looking at some land use and gun ordinance regulations in certain zones, which I did not see on this list. But I believe that most of the planning commissioners at the time, anyhow, would have supported that be included here. So that's something maybe that we could get a little feedback on briefly before we go to public comment. So yes, with that guidance, move forward, please.
Thank you. I just would like to underline some of Vice Chair Bauer's comments around the importance of climate change. And I certainly prioritize those things, even if I don't express them, and was focused on how we get vehicles to be less necessary, not only safer, but to increase the just the use of bike paths and so forth. So I just wanted to frame my comments accordingly, but then to support the certainly for any of you that know about my day job, I spend a lot of time with buildings, and don't mean to diminish the importance of them just in terms of prioritizations, given where our climate emissions are largely in Petaluma. They're very car centric. So the part of the challenge of prioritizations is we have a lot that we should do, and there's only so much time. So I just want to point that out. There's lots of great things on this list. I too support decarbonizing existing buildings. However, I don't think a city-run rebate program is probably the right thing to do. So just to try to add some controversy and interest to the conversation, and really anything that we can do to drive the connectivity on foot or on bicycle or in other non-vehicular ways across town, anything along those lines for me, and the connection of that to the natural environment, I think should be our priorities. So I'll stop.
Okay, and Vice Chair Bauer.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Potter. And I'll just follow up a little bit on the gun safety ordinance. And I know I was and still am an advocate of that. And I still am. I don't know if I would put that above climate focused priorities, but if it could be a priority, yes, I think it should be one of the many priorities that there are. And if it weren't to take too much effort to add that into one of the things that can be changed in our IZO going forward, I would like that to be added. I don't think it's, I don't want something else to be sacrificed as a result of that. One of the things on this list, because I think this list is pretty good, but everything here is weighted. Some things might take 10 hours of staff time and others takes hundreds. So there needs to be some, assessment of that, or weighing of that when this is being taken care of. Because I agree that the gun issue is very important, but not if it were to replace one of these. And I don't think everything should be considered equally in that. So that's my thought on that. And then I just wanted to weigh in on the rebates things, because Chair Ryder mentioned it. And I think anytime government can help out its residents to make changes in their homes regarding decarbonization or electrifying their grid, I'm all in support of that. I think that's a worthwhile endeavor, and I would support that in any way, shape, and form. Thanks.
Well, Vice Chair Bauer, I think you hit on a key point here, which is that you can't really add things without sort of taking away the resources from the other initiatives. And so that is the purpose of this discussion, is just to give feedback. And there's been input from the other boards and commissions, and it's going to be the tough job of the council members to really finalize the list and figure out what we're doing for the next 18 months or so. So we'll go to to Councilmember McDonald, and then I'll open the public hearing.
You made that point quite well. Then I thank you. I just want to note that we're 150 or more. It just kept creeping up, a number of priorities, and the reason you call them priorities is because they were important. But somebody gets to be the most important, and others are only the important. And it doesn't mean that anything drops off. It means that we want staff to be sure. Council wants to direct staff to be sure of the top 10 while still dealing with the other however many are still left on this list. And so it's not an exclusive list when you're in the top 10. Staff will still be charged with completing the whole 150. It's just that some will happen this year and some might happen out of point. Another point I wanted to bring up was that I think you'll see at the council meeting May 2nd when we discuss this, the crosstown connector discussion. I heard comment that perhaps Rainier was a leading candidate. Well, I think you can see from the votes that say that Caulfield is important independently, that it's not, certainly not pointing in any one direction or that direction that was suggested. And I think what the conversation previous council meeting was Rainier has been in the plans for 50 years, and if it was to be walked away from, it has to be done in an understanding of what the two projects compared to each other are. And so I think council is all on the same page, just not using the same words. I think that the consensus would be that activity needs to occur, that something needs to get done, and the discussion, whether it's focused on one, that's item 14, Caulfield only, or focused on sorting it out with all comers. I think that we'll find that across town in one way or another stays at the top, and that the discussion of merits will be the thing that brings it to a conclusion. I also noticed that the general plan update doesn't make the list, and nobody from planning has tweaked that one and said, hey, but that should be a top priority. And I think that goes to how the understanding of what a priority means. I think that staff knows that the general plan must stay on the schedule and must complete all the different specialty consultant efforts and assessment efforts of everything. It's critical to how our town goes forward. So it's a priority. It might not make top 10 or show on the list, but rest assured staff knows that they have to have delivery on that. And then in terms of walkability, improving our sidewalks in town hasn't made the list. And I think that that's more because it should be a staff everyday business, hopefully. There's so much broken sidewalk in town, and city has a program where they offer a certain participation to the property owners who fix. Because if you have if you're in a wheelchair, you're in a stroller, you're on an e-scooter, a lot of our city has real restriction to your mobility, and that's even just true of walk and trip. So, but it doesn't make the top 10 list. There's been discussion of a time of sale sidewalk improvement ordinance, but these are things that I think we expect staff to drive independent of identifying a top 10. So, but all those things, if we don't say them to staff, Planning Commission, Climate Commission, Feedback Commission, if we don't say it, then it's not known that there's support for them, even as 11 through 150. So it's important that we have this discussion and say what our 11 through 150 are as well. Thanks.
Sure. And then very briefly, Director Hines.
Yeah, I was going to say something kind of similar, that this is going for a top 10, but there are a lot of things that we are working on and will continue to work on. General plan and housing element being kind of an example of that. We're going to still work on those, even though they're not on the top 10, but there's a lot of those kind of things that come up. We are still working with the river park to further that. We're still, there's lots of other things that will be worked on, but these are the kind of big initiatives, the big items, and knowing the prioritization of those from council, I think will be really helpful for staff to focus those resources.
Well, we're looking forward to that list. And with that, I would like to open this item up for the public comment, and I'll turn it over to our moderator, Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Chair Potter. I do note that we see a few hands up in our attendees joining us tonight. I'll share my timer. Okay, and beginning with Paul G, followed by Sheila Baker. Paul, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, planning commissioners. What a great discussion. We live in a good town and we're all thinking hard about what the future should be. And you should all pat yourselves on the back for coming up with good ideas and taking this seriously. So thank you very much. I think you're doing a really good job of looking at these ideas. We live in a great city. We just know that from this past weekend. The Butter and Egg Days Parade was huge and wonderful, and I hope you all enjoyed it. We appreciated the city council walking the path with everyone else. There's some great pictures on Flickr. You can search for them under Photo Sensei. I put about 200 of them up there. So let's, for planning our future, summon our inner great one. By that, I mean hockey's great one, Wayne Gretzky, who advised to skate to where the puck is going, not to where the puck has been. So what does that mean for a future for Petaluma? How about no unnecessary pollution? And that means no more glyphosate. That's what you couldn't come up with. That has that nasty chemical that actually does create cancer and all kinds of problems. And we don't need it anywhere. We should ban it completely. Period. The end. And it also means no additional electromagnetic pollution than needed for wireless phone calls. Because wireless phone calls is the only service, telecommunication service, that qualifies for federal preemption. Wireless broadband, which is what the industry is trying to do, doesn't qualify for any preemption and needs no assistance from the city whatsoever to get any further into Petaluma. We have residential areas that should not be polluted by industrial heavy-duty equipment, which is what this is. Any cell tower is that. Doesn't matter how small or how cute it is. It matters how much power it outputs. It's important to understand that this top 10 list doesn't have anything to do with wireless on it. And that's great, because we don't need to change our ordinance that is protective. And so I hope we stick to those convictions and don't move into another area. Hey, Petaluma doesn't have a river. We have a slough. And actually, that's why it's titled, and it is a slough. We call it a river, but that's the reason why we get all of that silt in there. No Rainier connector. This idea has been kicking around for 20 plus years. We've had several funerals for this dead idea, but vested economic interests have allowed this to become a zombie, and it keeps walking around. The community has spoken many, many times. You have a Caulfield connector that already exists. Use the money to improve that. You don't need any extra Rainier connector. Never will, never did. And guess what? Safer streets means we're not trying to encourage a whole lot of cars driving around, right? What are we really trying to say? Let's have real bike safety, both traditional bikes and electric bikes. Let's put some money into Lynch Creek Way. How can we actually allow high volume of electric bikes to go cross town that way?
Great. Thank you for your comment, Paul. Up next is Sheila Baker, followed by Rakusin. Sheila, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to speak. I just wanted to comment on the safe and complete streets, and that hopefully we understand that every street, every road, every boulevard should be a complete street. And I mean everyone. And so as far as a bike boulevard, the bike boulevard that we should be thinking about is Petaluma Boulevard North, where those nice big parking lanes are not for bicycles, they're for cars. So in terms of creating complete streets, we tend to kind of wait until the developer comes along to say, okay, like 890 co-op, okay, well, we want this with this. And unfortunately, the safe street aspect can just go away because the developer needs parking here or there. And that happened with that project. And so to be careful when we are talking to developers, or they are talking to us, giving us these great designs that will affect our streets that are not safe, are not complete. And finally, roundabouts versus four-way stops. I just read it, Google searched it, and actually roundabouts are very, very efficient. They just allow tons and tons of cars, and they're kind of safe. You know, the speed limit goes down to 15. But in terms of really safety, it's the four-way stops that are the best for bicyclists. And I can just say that we could use those all over town, including Copeland and D Street, and you know where you don't really have a safe crosswalk going to the train station, and also to D Street going into the train station, where there's really no safe access there. And so I just want to say again, thank you so much. Let's think about this and think and think and think. When we say complete streets, let's mean complete streets, complete streets. Thanks so much for your time. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sheila, for your comment. Up next is Rakusen, followed by Nicole Camarda. Rakusen, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Eric. I just want to add in some comments after attending in the past couple of weeks a meeting on the most recent housing element, as well as a meeting of the GPAC and kind of some affiliated meetings. And I just want to, I guess, get clear with the direction. I mean, I understand the goals and objectives and the important items here, but it seems like there's kind of a consensus direction when you get in some of these meetings that there needs to be more development, not just to the state minimum. And I know there's a state required minimum that Petaluma can prove they can add a certain number of dwelling units, but there seems to be an impulse to really incentivize development. And in speaking with people at the housing element meeting, you know, it seemed like the consensus between the planners and different affiliates kind of on that call was that, yes, Petaluma is going to be a big city. And I think sharing that with citizens, even at the Butter and Eggs Day Parade, that's a perfect chance to kind of shoot the wind about this kind of stuff. And people are, I think, unanimously don't want that to happen. And so as we lay out these plans, I think it's important to understand kind of what the ultimate vision is. I mean, are we really trying to expand as much as possible? Are we trying to expand as little as possible, keeping to those state minimums, and then maybe tightening things up in terms of quality of life in Petaluma, like refining environmental protections when it comes to pollution, protecting the wetlands, protecting old growth forests? Do we also then maybe want to figure out ways to shuffle and redistribute infrastructure in the town to make it a more walkable city? I love the idea of a more walkable city, less cars, but I think, you know, adding development with that kind of goes against that objective in certain ways, whereas it might be, hey, let's limit development to that absolute minimum, but then let's try to shuffle things around so people aren't having to drive as far, they have availability of other options. So I just want to be clear about kind of that goal from the Planning Commission and the council members, kind of how you envisioned it. Are you trying to make this a huge city? Do we want to limit growth as much as possible to meet some of these other goals that I think most people think are more important? And then finally, I've recently been educated about this idea of, you know, a private management group, literally called the M Group. I thought that was a trope that has been helping guide the planning and development of Petaluma as a for-profit group that gets paid supposedly as developments are approved. So that's something that I just want to be out in the open for people on this call. And I think most citizens aren't aware of that, is that, you know, this isn't necessarily all elected council members that are making all of the planning decisions. You know, these are people that are incentivized to have more development. Now, does that play into a vision of making Petaluma a bigger town? I don't know for sure, but I think it'd be great to get clear on kind of what that vision is as we implement these goals. What is the sequence of implementing these things, and what is that overall vision for what Petaluma will look like? Thank you for the time.
Thank you for your comment. Up next is Nicole Camarda, followed by Susan Kirks. Nicole, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Hi, thanks everybody for your work on this tonight. That's a huge task to undertake. And I just really appreciate the Planning Commission's look at how people will be moving through the city as it grows, and how we need to be moving through it now and yesterday to meet our carbon neutral goals for 2030. I want to talk about the Safe Streets program. Safe Streets program is something that citizens of Petaluma have come together and put together. There is a platform, and you can check this out at tinyurl.com/Safe Streets Petaluma platform. You can also find more information on Facebook and Instagram under Safe Streets Petaluma. And Safe Streets is requesting, or has been requesting and will request at the next city council meeting, that some of the bike and pedestrian active transportation goals be merged together, such as road projects, bike paths, pet improvements, LRSP, Vision Zero, possibly VMT. And that the Safe Streets program will be adopted as a priority because it's time for transformational change in our town and for people to be able to get around out of their cars in a safe way. And I know in some ways this sounds like a big ask, but it's important to recognize that this is not intended to take time and money from other initiatives. Rather, it's supporting staff in the work that they're already doing and accelerating things that are low cost, such as tactical urbanism programs, bike parking, quick build projects, and having a commitment to contributing a certain amount of money towards this work. I also think the Parks Master Plan is really important and connected to Safe Streets. Our connectivity to parks and homes and schools is all intersectional. The trestle also is a bike and pedestrian pathway. I think the Caulfield Crosstown Connector is important. I am not a proponent of Rainier, but I would be interested in Rainier as a non-automotive multi-use path. And I just appreciate all of Sheila Baker's comments and her perspective as an important bike and ped person about complete streets. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Nicole. And up next is Susan Kirks. Susan, I've allowed you to speak. You'll need to unmute.
Thanks, Eric. And again, I'd like to compliment you on how you moderate the meeting. Really appreciate it. Well, I appreciate your discussion this evening and hearing the public comments. I am not hearing a consensus yet among you about what your top priorities are, so I'll be interested in your discussion. I'd like to say a few words about reviewing the list of priorities. One thing that I think is very important and did get 3 votes from 3 council members, but I'm not hearing you all discuss it, is the city charter needs to be updated. I don't know if you've ever reviewed it or not, but it is so out of date and in such need of review and updating for the very core of how our city is governed. And with the new districting process and new council members coming in, for me personally, that should be a very high priority. And that should include examining the relationship between the elected officials, the city manager, and the city attorney for how the city of Petaluma is actually governed and managed. When I hear comments or a suggestion about the consolidating committees, what that tells me is we need to look much more broadly, and we need to look at how our city is managed and what the role of the city attorney is in that process and how to optimize and review city departments and city functions. I don't think you all saw or have seen the Climate Action Commission's input to this process. Their meeting was very interesting. They had an ad hoc committee look at these and return with some edits to some of the priorities in the environmental area. And I gave input to Ann Baker, who was on the ad hoc committee, in the area of the moratorium, which is seeming to focus primarily on the North River properties, but really should be a broad citywide evaluation to include grassland, sensitive habitat areas, areas of wildlife corridors. All of that should be considered in terms of placing a moratorium on building in sensitive areas. And lastly, I would like to suggest that what Heidi said about the environmental area is extremely important. And when we talk about habitat and open space, honestly, it's something the city of Petaluma doesn't have much experience with. And unfortunately, I only have 9 seconds, but it's one of my areas of expertise. And I'll just stop there. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Susan. Okay, and I do not see any additional hands raised in our attendees joining us tonight. I'll stop sharing my screen and pass it back to Chair Potter.
Well, thank you so much. I want to echo the comments and appreciate the moderation, Mr. Roberts, that you consistently provide for us. And we've heard from this commission and now from the public. I think it is up to the city council to really come to consensus on this following the input they received from their boards and commissions. So I'm going to ask once again if there are any commissioners who have one last comment to make following those public input. And Vice Chair Bauer.
Sorry, yes, I just wanted to say that I agree with the public comment that I would think that in addition to having a moratorium in the area of the North Creek area, that I would like to see a moratorium on development in sensitive areas and wildlife corridors for the entire length of the Petaluma River that's within the city district. So I agree with that comment, and if possible, that I would hope the city council could consider something like that going forward. So, thank you.
Commissioner Wisman.
Yeah, just a quick comment reflecting on some of the things that I heard in public comment. I think there is a commonality between safe streets, complete streets, and both the connector, Caulfield connector, and the trestle, in that all of those provide opportunities for not just vehicle traffic, but the expansion of pedestrian and bikeways as well, to allow easy and efficient and safe ways of getting in different parts of the city. There are numerous examples that I see when I visit other cities of trestle-like architectural elements that have been turned into walkways along waterways, and I think there's a great opportunity to do that with the trestle as well. So I don't see it as conflict between safe streets and complete streets. I actually think it's an opportunity to expand those to those thoroughfares. Thank you.
And Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you. Lots of good comments from the public tonight. I appreciate that. I did particularly like the Gretzky metaphor, skate to where the puck is going, not where you've been. And then also the other thing I wanted to comment on was that what kind of city do we want for Petaluma? How big? What's going to happen? And I think that participation in the general plan update will really help folks. I know we've already touched on the existing conditions and a little bit into visioning, but the vision for the future is shaped in those meetings every bit till the end. So, talk with friends, weigh in, email the commissioners, email the staff. Your input is valuable, and I think we should look at how we've done in the past. And if you've been here 30 years, and it's been 1% growth a year, you really notice the change. But in Petaluma's current growth at like less than 0.5% per year, you don't see growth. You see a couple structures, and you're seeing more and more focused in the center of the city where everybody sees it. If we sprawled, it'd be on the edge of town and no one would see it. But I still think focusing any growth to the center of town is the important vision, and it will look different. But it, in our general plan update, we need to figure out, focus on how we want the city to grow. And so it was valuable to hear that vision. And then lastly, I note that there hasn't been any discussion of completing the active transportation plan, which is one of the elements of the general plan update. And it's in that active transportation plan that we'll see all the good path elements that are being discussed by the public and by other commissioners, such as a spur from Lynch Creek that goes alongside the river and veers to Rainier. Others that are existing right-of-ways through that area the existing sewer right of ways and things that could be turned into paths and trails. And so hopefully that effort goes forward. Maybe that's what goes into a park plan. Maybe that's what goes into the active transportation plan. But there are opportunities for better path off travel road, non-car transportation that we need to make sure happens. Don't know if it'll make it in the top 10. Similarly, there's SMART has done a lot of path work as a crosstown connector for path SMART, and currently closed on the freeway, but they just committed at their recent meetings that they will finish Payran to Lakeville this fall. And so that'll really be a helpful push into town. But from Lakeville to Water Street and Brewster's is only 500 feet. We need an advocacy effort pushing SMART to, or pushing SMART to do the work, or let the city do the work to get that 500 feet Lakeville to Water Street, so that then we have downtown to McDowell, without street crossings. So that would be, a second Lynch Creek level trail that we could have. Doesn't make top 10 because hopefully council trusts that staff is pushing on the other 100 priorities all concurrently. But there's just a lot of good stuff out there that could be done and that staff's working on. And I'm really crossing my fingers for these path work to get done. Thanks.
I really appreciate the reminder about the general plan process, and call me a traditionalist, but I feel like it's very important that the community come together and put forward a vision, and that drives our planning process. So I'm not a big fan of land use planning through moratorium. And I also would like to see as many of our ordinances be put off until we have the general plan, so we can have consistency. And the traditional planning steps are to start with the general plan vision, then to have a zoning ordinance that implements the general plan, and then to implement that in your town. So moratoriums can be helpful when conditions change and there might be an urgent life safety issue. But my understanding also is that they are temporary and that at some point legislation is required. So I'm going to put all my eggs in the general plan basket, and I'm looking forward to us continuing our work on that. So I want to thank everybody again for your focus and involvement tonight, including the public. And with that, this item is concluded. I want to just check with Director Hines. Do you have direction that you need to move forward?
Yes, I will write up this feedback and provide it as a follow-up item for the council's consideration when they are thinking about this item on Monday.
Thanks everyone again, and we're going to adjourn this meeting to the May 10th of 2022.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Recording stopped.